If you're a new travel creator or a small travel creator still building your audience, but you want to be able to work with and collaborate with hotels, where do you even get started? This episode is for you. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Christine Lozada. This is an episode of Everyday Badassery. During this podcast mini-series, I'm talking through tactics to help you as a travel creator to be just 1% more badass today and smarter than you were yesterday in how you create. We all started somewhere, and today I'm bringing in what I call one of the OGs. Jessie on a Journey has been travel blogging for a long time. She's an amazing creator, and we are talking through some of the things that we've noticed over time. Like, what are some really great ways new creators can collaborate with hotels? What are some tactics for pitching them? And how do her collaborations in the past look versus how do they look now? I don't want you to miss the show notes of this podcast, because not only will you be able to find Jessie and her resources, but you'll find one of the platforms that I use and stand by, which is Stay 22. It's one of the ways I monetize, because you'll kind of uncover this. A lot of new creators think there's just one way to monetize and work with hotels, when those collabs, or as you're working to get collabs and don't have any yet, you can build different things that can work for you and be monetized, like Stay 22. So don't miss out on the show notes below. Let's bring in Jessie.
Hey everyone, my name is Jessie, and I run the solo female travel blog Jessie on a Journey, as well as an online magazine called Epicurean Culture that focuses a lot on cultural stories and sustainable travel, a lot in food and wine. And then I also, over the years, after having lots of readers asking me, hey, I'm coming to New York, I know you live there, I ended up launching a site called NYC Photo Journeys, where there's lots of NYC content, but I also sell photo tours and photo shoots there. So kind of 3 different brands, but all under one travel umbrella, if you will. There are probably 3 main tips, I would say, and this is something I talk a lot about in the live calls in the membership. First of all, really consider if a collaboration makes sense. Even as a smaller creator, maybe you've had like a hotel or a brand approach you, and maybe it's unpaid, but they're like, in exchange for X, we'll give you a free night stay or something like that. You might be very tempted to take it, but really think about if the ask is equal to what you'd be doing. Because I know in my experience, just over the years, some of the asks, oh, we'll give you a 2-night stay in exchange for a blog post or an Instagram. Maybe that's, reasonable for you. But I've been asked before, like, hey, you could stay 1 night in our Airbnb, and in exchange, you have to create a 5-minute YouTube video. It's like, I'm not going to be able to sit down at any point. Like, that's not even going to be enjoyable for me. Or, just things like that. I once got invited on a press trip that was to a country that is across the world. It would have been 3 nights. They wanted like 3 blog posts, 10 Instagrams. It was crazy. I actually wrote back to them like, this is absurd. And it wasn't paid. So you have to I think if you're newer, you might look at that and be like, wow, I want to go to this cool country, but you're not going to enjoy it. Think about that. Like, is it actually worth the exchange? The other thing I would say is your photos and videos are always worth money, even if you have 0 followers. Mm-hmm. Because if they weren't using, your photos, they would be hiring someone for thousands and thousands of dollars to do a shoot. So never give photos and videos away for free, especially commercial license photography and videography. Sometimes that gets snuck into contracts. So read those contracts. I've had contracts that are like, we get access to your camera roll after the trip or after the hotel stay. Like, absolutely not. And speaking of that, this is a little bit off topic, but not off topic, but a different question maybe. Because your photos and videos are always worth money, even as a small creator, that could be a way to monetize through collabs. But the third tip I wanted to say for new people is you do want to create a media kit. Maybe people have heard of this, where when you pitch a hotel or a brand, you want to share this media kit that gives them a look at you, your blog, your achievements, what you cover. And usually it will include case studies and testimonials. But if you just started out, you won't have these. But you can, or you won't have them from brand collabs. But think about maybe creating a case study using either your own trip or maybe an affiliate that you do well with. You can ask them for a testimonial. You can kind of package up the content you've created and say, hey, I've gotten this many conversions. If you don't have an affiliate you want to showcase, maybe it's a trip you went on. Okay, I just went to Tanzania. So example, I just went to Tanzania. You can pull your different shares so they have an idea of, wow, this is how much reach they get. This is what the content looks like. So you can still create these case studies that can go in your media kit and give a hotel an idea of what they would get from working with you.
You know, as you're getting started, we all know you're still traveling and going places, and they might not be a collab. It might not be a paid trip, but you can still pretend it is and create that content and build that media kit so you can get there. Hey, I want to interrupt because I want to double click on something that we're talking about right now in the episode, which is you don't have any experience under your belt, but you're starting to build your portfolio. And so a couple of the things that I did early as a creator was for all the places I was already traveling to, I just created hotel content like I was being paid by or collaborating with that hotel. I may not have done it yet. I might not have that relationship yet, but just like you intern before you go work somewhere, you got to put in that sweat equity to try to build up your portfolio. And the other thing I was doing was not just taking, working on my skill of photography, drone videography, but I was also starting to create YouTube videos in which I talked about these properties. And yes, later that turned into ad revenue for people that were watching those YouTube videos, and later turned those into blog posts, which were also making ad revenue. But ad revenue, I don't know. It's not that much. A top misperception is that a lot of people think you can have a sustainable living income off of ad revenue. And I'm not saying it's impossible. It's definitely possible also, depending on how much you actually want to make or live by. But one of the other things that you can do is become an affiliate for all of these hotels. I just want to give you an example. I write a blog post about a hotel I stayed at, and someone might be reading that and, hey, there's also a YouTube video that walks me through that property. Cool. But part of that YouTube video and part of that blog post is also like, hey, be a smart traveler. This isn't the only place I was doing my research on. There's other properties in this area that you should be aware of. And that's where platform like Stay 22 is amazing, because then I can use their affiliate links not just for the property that I'm covering, but I can create maps, for example, of all the properties in the area and insert that, or help people to discover the other top places that are highly recommended in that area. And I can also make affiliate revenue off of that. So there are more ways, and Stay 22 makes it easy because everything is in one place on their platform, and I can track my analytics in there, and then everything is both, I'm seeing the clicks, I'm seeing the revenue coming through, and I can track it over time. So check them out in the description below. It's in the show notes, because you might not want to miss out on a sign-up bonus offer. That might be pretty good for you. All right, let's get back to the episode. Let's keep double tapping on that mistakes that creators first make when they start collabing, because you brought up a good point about, make sure it's a good fit. And one of the mistakes I personally made in the beginning was, oh, wow, like this was not a location that was a good fit for me. Like I shouldn't have been making travel content about that place. Or, another mistake that I made when I had first started being excited about the offer for a collaboration is this type of hotel and the price point of this hotel is not the right fit for my audience. I love to be in a little bit more of like the budget luxury or mid luxury or just luxury. And so, staying at a place that's just a budget hotel isn't a good fit for me, unless it's like a quick travel trip, for example. Are there other mistakes, whether you've made or you've seen newer creators make as they're collabing with hotels?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely the contracts thing. So, and not only not really reading, or maybe you read it, but you don't fully understand the contract, but not knowing that you can negotiate the contract. So I know when I first started out, I didn't know this. And this is, again, something I've had people in my community say like, oh, wait, I don't have to agree to these terms. Like, no, you have to, read it over and then say, hey, actually, I don't give away my photos for free, but I'd love to work with you to take photos that you might want to purchase after. You know, you don't have to be mean about it, but just say, I'm a professional. I'm a professional photographer and I do charge money for my photos. Also, this is something I didn't really know until I spoke with a lawyer. I had them look over a contract that I was given. Um, if you live in New York City, you can have free legal assistance every month through NELP. I think it's Neighborhood Entrepreneurial Law Project or something like that, but it's
Amazing.
NELP. But if no matter what city you live in, see if there's something like that
Mm,
near you. But they were like, you're giving unlimited use of your likeness? That's crazy. I'm like, oh, I didn't even really get what that meant. And they're like, what if this brand has a scandal and now they're posting your
mm,
photo on their Instagram? I didn't even think of that. So put limits on your likeness and also know that exclusivity is valuable. If they're saying, hey, during the month we're working together, you cannot work with competitors, you can't work with other local hotels, whatever it is, that can be an added fee. The amount kind of ranges. What I've kind of seen, and there could be people that charge less or charge more, but I feel like I've seen about 10% to 50% of the base rate added,
mm,
depending on how difficult it would be to be exclusive.
mm,
I feel like with hotel, like if you're just working with an individual hotel, unless like let's say your whole brand is about like New York City or New York City hotels, and a local hotel you're working with says, okay, we have to be exclusive, that would probably be hard for you. But I think in general, if you're a travel blogger going somewhere working with a hotel,
mm.
actually, if you're going on a trip and going to multiple destinations, that actually could be tricky for you and it could impact your ability to make other partnerships. So
Yeah.
that's just what you want to be thinking about with that. But know that if they're asking for exclusivity, you want to be charging more for that collab.
These are great points because, in general, and I'm speaking from my own experience, when I would get these invites to collab with hotels in the beginning, I would just be so excited, and, of course, they're casually like, and here's the contract. And really, I would just focus on the portion that was around the deliverables. And a lot of everything else, right, is a lot of jargon where you're like, what the heck is likeness? What does exclusivity mean? But understanding some of these basics, like you're calling out, is really important. And knowing that they're negotiable, because I now negotiate every single contract, even the deliverables, to make sure it's like you're saying before, right? Like it's fair. And you're not taking just, this collab where it ends up being so much more work and not good payback in any way for you, other than the experience, because sometimes at some point you may as well pay for the hotel yourself and then get the content that you need, because there are other ways that you can monetize. um,
Exactly. And the other thing to think about, I mean, I'm not an accountant, but I've had, accountants come speak to my members and stuff. And one thing to think about as travel bloggers, if you do like an unpaid hotel stay, technically you're supposed to write off the nightly rate of the hotel, I believe.
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So something to think about too. But going back to contracts, I also think if they're saying, okay, we require for this collab, we're requiring this by this deadline, exclusivity, yada, yada, yada. At some point, it's like, okay, this is a lot of ask. Like, this is a paid collaboration.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
If there's a lot of things they're wanting out of this partnership. So, something else to think about when you're looking at the contracts, or hopefully before the contracts come, if you're seeing, okay, they want XYZ by this date, it's, a lot of asks. It can be a
Yeah.
lot of asks.
I'm actually curious. Ooh, this is a tough one because every scenario is different. But I wonder if you and I could kind of create for someone who's listening to this and they're like, oh, I'm so small. Like, what can I expect? And I'll try to make a first attempt, because there's one way to collab, which is they reach out to you or you reach out to them by pitching them. And then there's also this scenario where there's these different platforms that, UGC creators can come to, and they can try to apply for these stays in exchange for content. And so I would say, in my opinion, for like a smaller creator who might make some UGC content, and maybe it's going both to them to use however they please, as well as going to your own, and I'm just going to say social media platforms of like Instagram and TikTok, a fair like 2-night stay. And again, there's so many different caveats that you could put in this. A fair 2-night stay, in my opinion, for a smaller creator might be an Instagram post that they also can use on their side with, 3 to 5 stories per day of your stay with all the correct hashtags, and tagging in that place. I would say that would be like kind of a start if I like had to tell someone like, this would be pretty fair-ish. Do you have an opinion on that? I'm so curious what you might say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I also think you could do something like let's say you're smaller and you're like feeling a little weird maybe about asking for monetary compensation. Maybe it's like, okay, I'll do the Instagram, but if you would like additional shares on different additional platforms, blog posts, etc., that could be a way to upsell that
Yeah.
initial smaller collab too.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I mean, and actually for those who are listening to this and they're like, oh man, like media kit pitching, like, oh, where do I even start? Well, first of all, don't forget Travel Blog Prosperity can teach you a whole lot of things, but let's actually just spend like a couple minutes talking about pitching, because I feel like the top mistake that most, new creators make who want to do a hotel collab is they jump into the DMs of that hotel on Instagram, along with thousands of other new creators doing the same thing, being like, hey, XYZ hotel, I would love to work with you. Let's collaborate. And it's like, oh my gosh, like what are you supposed to do with that? It's like, who are you and what do you want? And most importantly, what can you even offer? So for someone who's like, where do I even start with pitching? You just have like a couple tips for where they should get started at.
Yeah, so you just made a good point of knowing, what you bring to the table. That's how I always phrase it. Knowing why the brand would want to work with you. And I know if you're newer, you're like, okay, well, followers and engagement rate. I don't really have that yet. I think the two other main things you can think about is your audience. Even if you have a small but engaged audience that's very specific, like it's all solo female travelers, it's all families traveling by RV, you can tell the brand, hey, I have this, my audience is small, but it's 100% the
Yeah.
audience you're trying to get in front of, which is valuable. And I think the other thing is a creative style of content, for example, drone photography and videography, like you do.
So easy.
So if you can do that, that's definitely something that brands, it's not easy for them to just do that on their own. So you'd be helping them. So think about things like that as well. But I think you have to know that before you pitch.
Yeah.
Because in your pitch, you want to let them know, who you are and what your blog or platform, maybe you're pitching your Instagram, whatever it is, who you are, what your content is about with a link. Maybe you want to add a little like, hi, my name is Mary of Mary's Travels, a solo female travel blog with over 100,000 monthly page views. Like if you want to add a little thing like that, that's optional. Why are you emailing them? What is the collab about? You want to have your media kit linked like we talked about before. But something very important that I think a lot of people miss is if you're wanting compensation, you do want to make that clear in the initial email. And I'm not saying say, hey, I want to stay at your hotel for 2 nights. It costs $1,000. But you could say something like, if this sounds interesting, I'd love to send over my rate card. Just to let them know that you are looking for a sort of sponsorship here so that you're not having multiple emails back and forth before you're like, and by the way, it's going to cost you $1,000 to work with me.
I think that's such a good point, because too often people get really far down a conversation without being clear upfront, whether it's a trade or it's a paid opportunity. And then they get all the way there and then they realize, it's not what they wanted or it's not what they were looking for. And I 100% agree, because there are times when I was new, I thought I was going into a paid opportunity when I was definitely not going into a paid opportunity. And I was like, I've spent way too much time leading up to this point to realize this. So I think it's a great point up front.
If a brand or hotel emails me and says, we'd love to work with you on XYZ, I always respond back with something like,
Mm,
oh, this sounds amazing. I know my audience would love your XYZ. I'd love to chat more about deliverables and compensation. Like, just
mm,
make it clear that that's an expectation for you. Um, and one other thing in the pitch that I forgot to mention, how do you align? That's so important to include. You like, if you're just saying, hey, I'm a travel blogger and I want to stay at your hotel, there's, so many travel bloggers. But if
yeah.
you're like, hey, I'm a solo female travel blogger and my audience loves budget luxury, and your hotel fits that bill, like, why do you align? Why would this
Yeah.
be mutually beneficial? That's also very, very important to note.
One of the things I always spend time on before I pitch a hotel, and it does not take long, is what are the key things they are using to describe themselves on their website? Because it's very clear, like who they're trying to go after, and what the vibe of their brand is, and showing that you've done your homework and you haven't just picked them up off of Google Maps, or you picked them up because someone had mentioned them to you randomly. Like doing your own research on why it's a good partnership and fit, I think is really important. And actually,
Yeah.
I reflect on what you were saying before around listening to your audience as you built the things you built and what you now create. And even for me on a recent hotel collab, because I would love to, now that you are no longer a small creator, like what some of your hotel collabs now look like. One of the things for me, like listening truly to my audience and what they're looking for, helps me to determine what I'm asking the hotel for. An example might be on a recent hotel collab, I was like, I actually need somebody who's very knowledgeable about this property to spend time with me for like at least an hour, walking me through all the different room types, all the different amenities, all the different things you offer, so that I can deeply understand that, because I know my audience is going to ask a certain level of detail of questions. Because I'm also doing that research on, other content pieces I've seen people put out about that. What are people commenting on in there, and how does that translate over to your audience? And so that helps me to guide what I ask a hotel for. That kind of leads to, I would love to hear, like, walk me through what a recent hotel collab looked like for you, and like how you chose them, maybe how you pitched them, and then like what were the asks on either side. Ooh, that's a lot. Hold on, let me back up. Tell me about a recent hotel collab. You don't have to name names, but kind of generally, how did you find it and what did it look like?
Yeah. So, well, really quick, I want to go back to what you just said. I think doing, like, telling the hotel that you want to talk to someone about those things you just mentioned, I also think shows how serious and professional you
Yeah.
are. Like, I know this wasn't a hotel, but there's a brand, it's like an online travel agency for resorts that I've worked
Hmm.
with multiple times. They came to me, I'll use this as my example. They came to me. Did they pitch me first? I think they pitched me first, unpaid. I turned that around and was like, I'd love to work with you. I know my audience would love these, your properties, but I do charge for press trips. And, I sent them my rate card. Maybe I'll go into what a rate card is in a minute. Um, they then said, hey, we'd love you to cover this. And I then went back to them and said, well, I did some keyword research, and I
Mm,
actually think this would be a great angle to take. And they loved that. They were like, oh my gosh,
mm.
we love that you did this research and you are, I'm sure they're used to people who are just sort of in it for the quick trip. So that went really, really well. The asks for that, it was a multi-day press trip. It was somewhere where they had to fly me. I think it was one blog post and a daily Instagram, or maybe it was like I can't remember if it was daily Instagram or like half the time, but daily Instagram stories. So some type of daily social content.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, I asked them for a testimonial, and their testimony was amazing. It had like stats in it and stuff. That's another tip. Always ask for
Mm.
testimonials you can add to your media kit.
Mhm.
I then kept coming back to them with updates like, hey, the post is now in position 1, because that was really something great that came from that, was the blog post I wrote got to position 1 in Google.
Nice.
Or, hey, this didn't happen on this campaign, but like Lonely Planet retweeted my share. These are things you want to keep letting them know and just keep nurturing that connection because it can lead to additional collabs. So I have collaborated with that brand again on another paid hotel press trip. And that's happened to me a few times where I've really gone above and beyond. Like I think it was a 4-day trip and I had to do, let's say 2 Instagrams, but I did 4.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go crazy, but I do like to do something extra and really show that I didn't just do the bare minimum. I was really into this campaign. I really wanted to see success. And yeah, just being open with them about, hey, here are the links to the deliverables, being timely. But I've had many different collabs where I have gone above and beyond and really been, nurturing those relationships turn into either additional collabs or this isn't a hotel brand, but like ambassador collabs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely valuable. And you'd be surprised. I know this just from speaking. I have a press trips course where I did interviews with a bunch of different PR agencies, tourism boards, hotel brands, just brands in general. And 2 things they both all said is A, the thing I already mentioned, they hate when bloggers and creators don't mention that they're expecting payment in the initial email.
Uh-huh.
And B, they're always surprised how many people don't follow up with them with stats. They kind of just post something and then like never follow up. So make these people's life easier. When you're collabing with someone, make their life as easy as possible.
Yeah. Well, what's one thing I recently started adopting is at the end of a collab, after like I've done all the deliverables, I make myself just a calendar reminder for like, I don't know, 4 months later, 6 months later, something that makes sense that has like, their name. So I can easily go search that in my email inbox, plus like links to that content. So I can just quickly go glance, like, how is it performing? Like, does it make sense to like put a couple tweets behind it or, something like that? And I just love your story because it really comes back to, oh, well, obviously this collaboration was a good fit for you. And you wanted to make this content and you wanted this content to work well because you're not just serving the collab, you're serving your audience as well, which is something, with time becoming a larger creator is what comes with it. Oh, I love that. And actually, I love how you talked about your pitch course and you were talking with different PR firms, et cetera. Do you have any like one more tip that you can put in there from your learnings of chatting with all those people?
Trying to think something they did talk about. A lot of them actually also said the thing that I think I said before about numbers not meaning everything. I think almost all of them, because I had asked what's like the first thing you kind of look at. And they said they do look at numbers and engagement, but really they look at, does the content and audience align with them? And also if it like has the creator posted anything recently that even could almost be like, I don't want to say like, I feel like nobody's promoting like porn or anything crazy, but like just something weird maybe that they posted that would be like, we don't really want to align with that. So they do look at that too.
Yeah, I think that's a good one because I definitely know that the places I pitch do their, obviously they'll click on the links that I provide them for my media kit and things like that, but they're doing their own research on me as well to make sure I am a good fit, especially if I'm asking for something beyond just a collab. This is fire advice. Tell us again, where can people find you and tell us a little bit more about Travel Blog Prosperity?
Yeah, so the best place, I'm Jessie on a Journey basically everywhere. It's my website. And if you go to my website and you click blogging, you can find a lot of different, like I have tons of free resources for bloggers if that's something you want to dive into. I have pitch templates and things like that. But in Travel Blog Prosperity, you get more of the small group help. And our membership is so nurturing. That's one thing I love about it is everyone in there is just rooting for each other and helping each other. I'd love to see everyone in there. You'll get to learn from Christine as well with her amazing workshops. Because you're like the ultimate social storyteller. So that was the last one I think you did for us. Because I was like, okay, I want someone, I want something on social storytelling. So I think it's so valuable. And I think it's something people find confusing. But when I think of who whose stories I love watching, you were the first person that came to mind.
Oh, thank you. And
My
actually,
husband follows you too. I mean, he would like he doesn't just follow you as like a friend. He follows you as like he really likes your content.
oh, I
And he's
love
not even
that.
really a traveler. I mean, he goes on one trip a year, but
I love that. All of this info is in the show notes for you. Thank you for doing this with me, Jessie.
of course, thank you for having me.
Jessie is so awesome. Don't forget to check out all the things that she offers in the show notes below, as well as learn more about Stay 22. But I want to just add, you guys know I love value. I want to add one more helpful tip, and this is one as a creator who was brand new, how I got the attention of a lot of hotels. And it was through storytelling on social media. So as I was practicing my drone photography, drone videography, or even just taking nice photos with whether my iPhone or my DSLR, I would post these stories to my Instagram stories. And I would talk about the places that I was at in this storytelling format, except I would also tag in the property so they could see this story set that I was putting out and the content I was creating. And now I go from being this nobody, literally no one that was on their radar, to someone who, ooh, those drone shots look pretty good. And I can't tell you how many times, whether hotel properties or just places in general, destinations, tourism boards, fill in the blank, have reached out to me afterwards, just being like, hey, that was awesome. Usually when you're a new creator, it turns into we would love for you to send us that 4K 60 frames per second video in full resolution for our use, or please send us that photo for, full rights and use. And that's usually what they'll ask. But you can turn that now conversation into something. You can turn it into a collaboration. You can turn it into selling your photos and videos. You can turn it into fill in the blank. There's a lot of opportunities here. And so that's one thing to consider. You can absolutely do it no matter what size your audience is. And as you're growing that audience, make sure you are finding more ways to monetize through things like affiliate revenue through Stay 22. More in the show notes. I'm Christine Lozada. Catch the next episode where I share some of the top mistakes that creators of all sizes make, that whether I've made them myself or I've commiserated with other travel creators around mistakes that they have made. That's in the next episode for you. In the meantime, go forth, be badass, create. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.